Hello, this is Head to Head on UATV and I'm Oles Gerjuk. The international community has united in declaring Russia to be among the main threats for peace and territorial integrity. The United States, together with the European countries, adopt severe sanctions against the Federation for inflaming war in the east of Ukraine, the annexation of Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula for its participation in Syrian war and use of chemical weapons in the United Kingdom. But can these economic sanctions against Russia succeed? This question now becomes the topic for the discussion with Yulia Osmolovska, foreign policy expert. Today she is with us in the studio. Hello and thank you for joining us.
Good day.
So, Ms. Osmolovska, Petro Poroshenko says he expects closer cooperation between the European Union and the United States regarding peacekeepers in Donbass and sanctions imposed on Russia. And this announcement comes just ahead of his meeting with German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Emmanuel Macron. In your opinion, what kind of dialogue does our president expect with his counterparts, or does he hint on something specific?
It's very difficult to say that he hints on something specific, judging from the necessity for him to do this sort of political statement ahead of the visits and meetings, especially with the countries which are thought to be our close, if not allies, but strong supporters in this contest with Russia. On the other hand, you have a lot of people understand that these sanctions actually haven't proved their utmost efficiency in forcing Russia to change their position in the conflict or in their interaction with the other countries.
So we need stronger sanctions.
So I think that we should consider different other options for strategy, how to force Russia really genuinely want to negotiate with the other countries and not just to imitate negotiations. This is the first question. And so another question is, or another point is that it's very difficult to maintain integrity among the European member states about the actual effectiveness of sanctions. And this is also an issue which should come to agenda and to every people's minds if you think about how efficient is this tool against Russia.
In your opinion, what could be the other ways to force Russia to implement actually the Minsk Accords and to go for this restoration of peace in the Donbass?
I don't think that the verb force is actually something which could be applicable to Russia, which could actually force Russia to change its behavior.
To motivate it.
Yes, I think we have to consider some things that could motivate Russia want to negotiate, because all the previous strategies that have been exploited and presented by not just Ukraine but the other countries to force Russia to do something, they just failed so far. So we have to consider some smart strategies in order to bring Russia to the real negotiation table.
For example?
For example, we have to assess more clearly Russia's genuine interests. One perception is that Russia's genuine interest is to keep NATO and EU far away from its borders in order to maintain this sort of strategic periphery territories, which is essential for her security threat. So at least someone or some countries have to sit down and to talk, sit down to the negotiation table and to talk with Russia frankly what actually she's afraid of and how they could minimize these threats for Russia. And then Russia would believe that actually her interests are also counted, not just the other participants. And in this case, Russia would consider a possibility of having proper dialogue with those who are ready to consider her interest as well.
But after these negotiations, how to avoid this seizure by Russia?
Let's put the answer in a different way. Could you just remind the recent comments that French President Emmanuel Macron made about Russia in an interview to one of the French media? So he actually said that Vladimir Putin is a very strong player, and we have to maintain strategic historical dialogue with Russia, because we have to not let Russia get isolated, but we have to involve her somehow in a different dialogue on European affairs. So this is the question. This is the answer actually. There's everybody who is talking about forcing Russia on one hand, but on the other, they are ready to negotiate with Russia. And in this context, forcing means that the other party is playing with an alternative to show Russia what they are going to do if Russia is not actually ready to negotiate and compromise on some of issues.
Well, this is a very interesting point of view, and thank you so much for that. You mentioned that sanctions are not efficient yet. And
they haven't proved efficiency.
Yeah, they haven't proved their efficiency. So recently, on the 2nd of May, Ukraine has prolonged these sanctions imposed on Russia, and moreover, it synchronized the new sanctions with those ones imposed by the EU countries and the US. Is it going to increase their efficiency or not?
I think that the strategy that Ukraine political elite is playing at the moment to align with the sanctions which are imposed by US and EU in first line. So this is not something which is logical in terms of that our country, which is at the border line, at the front line with Russia, and we should have done this in the first line, and then the others should follow these sanctions.
Sure.
But it goes vice versa. And in this context, the statement of our president that we are aligned with the sanctions of US and EU, and we hope that because of this move, to see more closer cooperation against Russia and to force Russia on all the issues which are of interest to Ukraine, starting with this peacekeeping mission for eastern Ukraine territory. So I'm a bit doubtful about the actual effectiveness of this move of our political elite in terms of practical applicability.
Practical results. Yes. Okay, yeah, because mainly these foreign sanctions are concerned about Russian oligarchs and also Russian companies' assets. So this March, the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine decided to cease the program of economic cooperation with Russia, well, scheduled for 2011-2020. It's a bit surprising that our politicians have been shouting about this since 2014, and actually the actual decision comes out only on the 4th year of the conflict. But still, according to President Petro Poroshenko, Ukraine's cooperation with Russia is now only about 9% of its export due to gas transit and products of the energy complex. And then, yeah, it just proves another time that probably it's more of a statement to synchronize this sanctions with the European Union and with the United States. But in spite sanctions, what could be done with this peacekeeping mission? You mentioned that we should involve Russia into the dialogue, but Russia does participate in UN Security Council.
Yes, it does participate. It is a member of a permanent group of UN Security Council, and it has the veto rights. So we have to stem out from this in order to assess whether we will actually forcing Russia to agree for the mode of peacekeeping mission that Ukraine stands for. We could actually succeed in this, because if we won't get Russia on board and she agrees with the vision of this peacekeeping mission that Ukraine stands for, so we will fail. That's simple, because they would just simply veto any resolution on any kind of peacekeeping mission which is not according to their vision. And right now we know that the parties of Normandy format, they have an opposite vision about this peacekeeping mission. And Russia doesn't agree on what Ukraine, Germany and France and the US wants. So we need to get involved not in imitation of negotiations, that's what I mentioned before, but in real negotiations. And Russia would be interested to enter into real negotiations if she understands that her interests are also counted. I'm repeating this again, but this is Harvard negotiation approach based on interests. And this is something which is often forgotten by our politicians, not just our, but US politicians and European politicians as well, when they try to assess how actually to talk Russia into negotiating rather than just to have this counter stance that we experience these days.
Well, many experts also mentioned that UN Security Council is no longer so much efficient and it needs to be reformed. How do you think, is there any mechanism, for example, to deprive Russia of its veto privilege, taking into account that many countries do see Russian Federation as the main threat?
The ideas of reforming UN Security Council and to deprive the founding member states from the veto right has been on the agenda for so many years already, and it's proved to be unsuccessful because every country which has this veto right would never agree for liberate deprivation of this right. Therefore, I think that this would be very difficult to come to an agreement, and the plenty of mechanisms are currently being considered, but no one proved to be those that could deliver the desirable results. So I'm a bit skeptical as well about the prospects of depriving Russia or any other member of Permanent Security Council from a veto right.
I understand. Well, UN Security Council will consider ways to resolve the conflict in the Donbas area on May 29th. Could you foresee any results?
Well, before this date, we would have the meeting of Germany, France and Ukraine talking about this peacekeeping mission. Then I would anticipate some sort of communication between American political authorities and Russian political authorities in between. Then the visit of President of France to Moscow comes. So before 29th of May, a lot of events have been happening and all of them could potentially influence what might happen at the UN Security Council on 29th. And then again, don't forget, a bit different issue, a bit distant one, but very important. This is Iranian nuclear program and the decision whether for United States to stay in or to get out of this deal. And this would also reshape a bit the political landscape of the world and actually the agenda of UN Security Council as well. So my vision would be, let's wait and see a bit how the world evolves. So far, I can't see any likeliness that Russia would agree to compromise on its position. Yeah.
But even taking into account that Poland actually began chairing the United Nations Security Council, and Poland is a strong ally of Ukraine, and basically it was a proposition of Poland to start the negotiations on Donbas in UN Security Council on the 29th of May. Even taking this into account, we cannot really expect right now and talk about some outcomes. That's what you mean?
Yes, I mean that we have 15 members of Security Council, and we have 5 of them who have veto right. So Poland, as the chairing country of UN Security Council, has a limited influence on this issue. Yes, it could bring issue on the agenda and to channel discussions, but whether we would see a sort of final resolution which would satisfy all the parties, this is still to be seen.
Well, thank you so much for your interesting opinions and thanks for this conversation.
Thank you very much.
That was Yulia Osmolovska, foreign policy expert. Thank you for watching Head to Head and stay with UATV.